Breakfast at Tiffany's is a short novel written by Truman Capote and is centered on the relationship between the narrator and the woman who lives in the apartment beneath his own. The setting is New York of the 1940s, and most of the events in the novel take place either in or close to the apartment building where the pair live. In a sense, Breakfast at Tiffany's is similar to a piece of life writing or creative nonfiction. The narrator begins by writing, "I am always drawn back to places where I have lived," and starts the next paragraph with, "It never occurred to me in those days to write about Holly Golightly," indicating that the events of the novel have already taken place in the life of the narrator, and he is reminiscing on the memory of a person. Throughout the text, the narrator, who is never given a name, tells the reader about his life over the course of the time he spent living in the apartment, the common theme of each anecdote being Miss Holly Golightly, his neighbour. The reason why I like this novel so much is because it is structured as if it were a real piece of creative non-fiction, despite being in the realm of fiction. The way Capote shares the narrator's memories of Holly with the reader creates an air of nostalgia, partly due to the fact that the main events in the novel take place a long time ago. The introduction to the story, told in the narrator's present, seems almost depressing, because years have passed since his last sight of Holly, and yet still he clings to his memories of her and has not really moved on. But when the narrator transports the reader into his memories as a young, aspiring writer, there's a sense of youthful giddiness. He's young, he's chasing his dreams of being a writer, and his life is full of excitement. I really like this aspect of Breakfast at Tiffany's because it reminds me that I have the capacity to chase my own dreams and lead a fulfilling life if I choose to. I think, though, the most important aspect of the text is the character of Holly Golightly. Capote's motivations in centering the novel around Holly and developing her character in the way he did, I believe, is to encourage a reader to realize that every person has depth. Initially, Holly seems to be a superficial girl who is only interested in parties and having a good time. Later on in the novel, the reader learns that Holly isn't always what she seems. She had a difficult childhood and was married as a teenager to a much older man, Doc Golightly, before she ran away to New York to start a new life. Her name is not really even Holly, and her brother, Fred, is killed in action, causing Holly to smash everything in her apartment. Her brother's death had a profound impact on her. The narrator did not see Holly for months afterwards, and when he did, she had changed and stopped dressing nicely and dyeing her hair. In giving Holly a rough and mysterious life prior to her time in New York, Capote gives the reader a chance to sympathize with the character rather than dismissing her as little more than a flirt. Capote surprised me with the depth of Holly's character, and I began to realize that every person has a story like Holly's. I think Capote's motivation when developing Holly's character is to allow a reader to recognize how complex the lives of others are, that people are multifaceted and never exist on just one plane. I interpret Holly as being almost a symbol of happiness, despite the complexities of her character, because she lives without restraint. She simply does what she wants to do and has fun. Even though her background is harsh, she does not let it impact her daily life and carves her own path. Really, the time when he knew Holly was probably the happiest and most interesting the narrator's life was ever going to get. He loved Holly, and instead of going with her to Brazil, he let her go and pined for her since that day. The narrator missed his opportunity for happiness with Holly, and he did not realize how much she meant to him until she was gone, and he waited for her to write to him. She only did so once. He continued waiting for Holly to write again, but he never heard from her. Often, I don't realize how valuable happiness is until I no longer have it, or I miss an opportunity to chase my ambitions and I regret it, and I think that is what Holly is to the narrator, a missed opportunity for happiness. Reading Breakfast at Tiffany's influenced the way I thought about character when developing my fiction piece, The Jeweler. I wanted to create a character somewhat similar to that of Holly, cheeky, strong-willed, and cleverer than they initially let on. The idea of shaping character through the eyes of a separate narrator was something I seriously considered before I assembled the plot of my story, upon which I realized that this technique wouldn't work for the idea I had in mind. Because I liked Breakfast at Tiffany's so much, I still wanted to allow it to shape my work in some way. I decided instead to model some of my main character's key traits after Holly Golightly. Like Holly, my character is independent financially, and her background is unknown to the reader. She doesn't worry about upsetting or disappointing people, and isn't particularly sentimental. My character is similar to Holly in that she would not hesitate to leave everything she knows behind to pursue a better life, or to do something of meaning. Breakfast at Tiffany's is a deep inspection of what people are really like, and how no one is merely superficial. Capote encourages the reader to reconsider the people in their life they might consider to be two-dimensional, and realize that every person is more than what they might first appear to be.